two friends taking pictures of the rising full moon on a summer night.
Two teenage kids doing what teenage kids do.
When a stranger with a gun and a death wish changed everything.
It was violent, it was senseless, and I will never understand it, I will never accept it.
I'm Amy Donaldson, and unfortunately, we're all too familiar with stories about how violence shatters lives. But what we rarely see is how they are rebuilt. In a new podcast, The Letter, we relive tragedy, but only so we can hear the rest of the story. The struggle to reclaim lives, the realities of grief, and the possibilities of forgiveness.
I believe in miracles. Sometimes I thought, there are no miracles. Yeah, there are, and this is a big one.
Follow The Letter at theletterpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to Project Recovery. We're talking to Rod Gardner, DDS. He talked about his early, I wouldn't say success, but trials into marijuana, Xanax, Tylox, and Percocet, and all of that. But you don't come on a podcast if you just stop there. Something usually goes wrong. So when did it start to get ugly for you, Rod?
You know, it was about 3 years into being a dentist there in Garland, and we had moved to a new house, and I was installing our sprinkler system, and I hurt my wrist, doing the sprinklers, and I had not had a narcotic, a Percocet or anything like that since my mission. So I decided I needed one to take care of my wrist, but really I was looking for something else. I was looking for a way to deal with stress.
Did you know you were looking for something, or was it kind of a subconscious drive?
Somewhere in the middle of that.
Okay, all right.
But so this would have been like 90, maybe 97, 98. And I called this good old boy pharmacist downtown and said, hey, I need some Lortab. Can I call it in for myself? And he was like, yeah, just don't make a habit of it. So I called me in some Lortab. And as soon as I took that pill, all of it came back, and it took off from there. At first I would only use them on the weekends, or if we were going on vacation. I would swear to myself I'm not going to use this stuff while I'm working on patients. And for a while, and I don't have any idea how long, I was okay at that, but I was using a lot more on the weekends.
And that was just to get through the weekend or relax, that sort of thing?
I just thought
to feed the addiction.
It was making me a better person. I can remember going home after a long day, take one, and I'm thinking, how can this be bad?
Yeah.
Look at me. I'm a dentist. I come home. I'm Superman at home. I'm washing dishes. I'm
putting in your own sprinklers.
Yeah, you start telling yourself these lies of how it's making you better. And eventually I got to about 10 a day. Wow. So needless to say, I started taking them during the week. And as you know, that you're no longer really taking them to feel like Superman. You're taking them to avoid feeling crappy. And so that addiction was kicking in, and I got to about 10 a day. And I remember my sister called me, and she said, hey, someone called me and said they think that you might have a problem with pills, and they're worried about you. And that was enough for me to run to my wife and say, hey, I've got a problem. I need some rehab. So
somebody who knew your sister had seen you in altered state or something?
I think they knew that I was up to no good with writing prescriptions.
So you're still writing your own scripts for this? Huh?
I was starting to write them for other people.
Uh-huh.
And that got a lot worse. So after that initial time, I went to an outpatient rehab over in Logan where I could go in, and I think I went after work.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd work all day, then I'd go to rehab. And I remember, I want to see these 12 steps. Everyone's talking about these 12 steps, and these are the 12 steps that are going to make me better. I want to read them. And it's kind of a letdown because it's just the same things I've learned my whole life. To me, it was this process of repentance. And I looked around at the other people in there and thought, I'm a lot smarter than any of these people in here. I'm going to get through this program, and I'm going to go back to just using them on the weekends or on vacations. And so I got through that rehab and went right back to, I don't even think I got totally clean through that rehab. I don't know how I did any UAs but I got a lot worse, got to where I was taking 30 or 40 a day.
Wow.
Went to Cirque Lodge and hated every minute of it. But I was clean for the time that I was there. And
how long did you stay at Cirque?
It was a month. Yeah, I couldn't get out of there quick enough. The anxiety, you're medicating all that stuff for so long, and you're taking things to go to sleep. And I detoxed at LDS first and then went up. But for that 30 days, I don't think I slept. I was going through the motions of trying to, and, they had a gourmet chef there, and I hated the food. It wasn't enough, I wanted some Pop-Tarts or something.
Yeah.
Gourmet Pop-Tarts.
And you're just looking for reasons to hate this because you're not ready for the help. And
Exactly.
I mean, it happens all the time, especially in my experience when I was at recovery. You could see some people come in and it didn't matter what you do, they were going to find the opposite and go at it. And there were some people that were ready to hear the help and receive the help, I guess.
Yeah, and Cirque Lodge it's a great program. But I just, like you said, Casey, I just wasn't ready. So
after 30 days, they let you go. How long until you start using again?
Oh, probably 4 days. Yeah. And I went deep. Really fell off the wagon. Moved out of my house, left my wife and kids. Thought she was my problem. Started drinking, going to bars. So I was taking pills all day, drinking.
And the whole time running a practice?
Running a practice and writing scripts for 3 or 4 different people. The way it worked is I'd say, hey, I'll give you $50 if you'll go fill this prescription for me. And I found 3 or 4 people that I knew I could manipulate. I don't put it on them at all. This was me working my scheme. And I paid these people money. Some of them wanted a few pills, and I would get the rest. But I also started doing anything to get them. I would go to church, look around, make sure, kind of see who's there, and then excuse myself and go into houses in the ward because I knew they were in church. Had a friend whose wife was dying of cancer, and I think I was in the elders quorum presidency at the time. And I'd heard that she was really bad and she was in the hospital. So on my way home from work, I went and bought a bag of groceries. And when you hear someone has cancer and you're a drug addict, you think they've got pills in the house. So I take this bag of groceries, I go to their house, I knock on the door. I know they're not home. I've already been told they're at the hospital. But I want to look like, if anyone sees me, like I'm a great guy, So I knock on the door, no one's home, I turn the knob, it's unlocked. I walk in, I put the groceries on the table, and I raid the cupboards. And I get morphine and all these pills. And coming clean with that story to this friend of mine years later was really hard to say, hey, I got to talk to you about something. But the forgiveness was instant. And so I started just doing whatever it took to get these pills.
The crazy thing about addiction and drugs is you're doing things that you could never fathom that yourself would be doing. I mean, I can see it right now in your mannerisms, in your face. I can hear it in your voice. This is not a fun conversation for you to be having right now.
No, I wrote prescriptions for people. I had an old boy come into my office. I wrote him I pulled a tooth. I wrote him a prescription. And then that night, I took one of my kids with me to go check on him to his house. But I was going to his house to try and get my hands on those pills. So I go to this guy's house. Somehow I get in his kitchen, and I find the bottle, and I take the bottle that I had prescribed to him that day. Another guy I prescribed some. I followed him. It was right on my lunch break. I followed him. He went right to the pharmacy. I sat in the parking lot. And I look back on it going, what was I thinking? Well, was I going to wrestle him down and take these pills? What was I thinking?
What did the mugger look like? My dentist.
Yeah, exactly.
He looked like my
Really weird.
That was so weird.
But man, that just proves that the addiction acts like a magnet. It just, you didn't even know why you're following him. You just were drawn,
hoping for something.
yeah, for an opportunity to get some pills.
He goes in. I see him come out with that little white bag, and I get that
Euphoric.
adrenaline rush. I follow him home. Still, what am I going to do? He gets out of his car, and I notice he doesn't have the white bag. He walks in his house. I pull up, reach in his car, take the pills,
Wow. Yeah.
and I'm gone. And I'm just like
So you're clearly, and not to be rude, but you're out of control.
out of my mind.
And so you're stealing from patients, you're writing false scripts. Eventually, this has got to catch up with you somewhere.
Yeah.
Breaking and entering.
Eventually, I got hit with two second-degree felonies for prescription fraud and 5 third-degree felonies. But they gave me a chance at drug court. So if you go to drug court and you make it through, then they
Expunge it.
throw it all out. Well, I was still using and drinking, and I don't even know how I got accepted to the drug court program, but they put me on this naltrexone, which is a opiate blocker. Mm-hmm. So even if you tried to take some, it would block it and you wouldn't get the high from it.
They use it, the same thing for alcohol as well. I mean, they use it
they
both
put
of
me
them.
on that too, and abuse.
Yeah.
And I didn't take the naltrexone, so they gave it to the pharmacist, and I had to go to the pharmacy every morning, and this pharmacist had to crush this naltrexone up and watch me take it. And this was all to not go to jail, and by now the DOPL was involved, and this was all to not go to jail and not lose my dental license. They put me on antabuse. I took the bottle of antabuse, and that they would I would go to the health department to take that pill. So I had to go to the pharmacist to get my crushed up naltrexone. I had to go to the health department to get my antabuse. But before I took the antabuse to the health department, I just found some generic aspirin that looked just like the pills in the antabuse, and I just replaced that. So when I'd go to the health department, they thought I was taking antabuse, but I was just taking aspirin.
Huh. Wow.
So I started drinking more. I couldn't use the opiates because of the naltrexone, but I was still hitting the Xanax hard. And eventually I got kicked out of drug court, and that's when my jail time started.
So you end up in, is it jail or is it prison?
Started in jail, and then they sent me to this program. It's called Diagnostics, and I don't think they have it anymore, but it's at the prison. It's in A West. It's in just an awful part of the prison, and I remember the drive down there in the back of this sheriff's car. They had another guy going with me, and he'd been to prison before, and he was crying, and I knew, okay, this is, I'm headed for some rough times, and we were in 23-hour lockdown for 2 months. So you ate in your cell, everything. You get to come out for 1 hour to take a shower. If somebody did something wrong in the tier, you didn't get a break. You could be in your cell for 3, 4, 5 days at a time.
Wow.
And I'm down there with nothing to deal with my anxiety. So it's through the roof. I'm not sleeping. And it's a god-awful place. It's so bad. It put the fear of I can't even explain how bad it is. Anyone who's gone to prison and survives it and comes out and is anywhere near a contributing member of society, I have a ton of respect for them. It was horrible.
So you spend 13 months in prison. What are you doing to better yourself, or is it just straight punishment?
It was straight punishment until the last 6 months. And after the prison, they sent me to a halfway house, and all I had to do was make it through the halfway house, and I could go home and still have a probationary dental license. Don't ask me how. But I used drugs after I used some OxyContin in the halfway house. This was after going to prison.
The god-awful place, as you described.
The god-awful place. As soon as this OxyContin was placed in front of me, my initial reaction was, get the hell out of here. But before this kid could leave my room, I said, no, I'll take it. And I got kicked out of the halfway house. So then they send me back to jail, and I got to go back in front of the judge
that sent you to prison.
Yeah.
The whole time this is going on, I've got to ask, what is your wife? What is your kids? What's going on in your home life?
It's a mess. My wife started the process to file for divorce. She'd finally just had enough, and she actually sent my brother-in-law in to have me sign some papers at the jail, and I wouldn't sign them. But, you know, my kids, they, I don't know where they are now. I give all the credit to my wife. She tried to keep the practice going. Eventually she had to sell it. They didn't know what they were going to live on. Dad's in jail. After I got kicked out of the halfway house, and, you know, they revoked my license. My DEA was gone. Everything was gone. And that was, you know, everybody talks about rock bottom. I've been bouncing off the bottom for a long time. But now I was to a point where I knew it was over. They threw me out of the church, excommunicated me from the church. And I just remember laying in this cell back in Cache County thinking, you know, sometimes when you're in a really bad situation, you can think of one good thing. It's like, okay, I'm going to focus on that one good thing. There was nothing. And they brought the razors in one night, and they count the razors, you know, when they bring them in and take them out. And I took one of them, and I busted it up, and I got the blade out of it and flushed all the plastic down the toilet, stuck it in the bottom of my shoe, and I just didn't know. I didn't see any way out. I was done. I was gonna lose my family. My practice was gone. I wasn't a member of the church anymore, so God didn't like, you know, I was alone. And I remember putting that blade up to my wrist, and you know, I could never do it, but I just wanted to see, because going back to prison terrified me, and I knew that's where I was going. But thank goodness to a good lawyer, I stayed in jail for 6 months while the lawyers all tried to figure out what they were going to do with me. And during that 6 months, I you know, there's no drugs to turn to. You can't get in your car and go for a drive. You can't go for a run. There's nothing. You're just there, and it's loud. And I just started. I'd take my towel and wrap it around my head to block out the light and the noise, and I'd just lay on my bunk. And I remember just laying there trying to say a prayer, and just I'd get a little ways into it, and I just couldn't even pray. I was so wound up, but after weeks of trying, I finally started to find some peace. And I was in the cell with about 30 guys. It's like triple bunks, and the jail commander decided to offer me a job in the kitchen. So they pulled me out of there, and they put me in a cell with 5 other guys, which was, at the time, it was, okay, there's the one good thing.
Yeah.
It was a blessing. And I had been laying on my bunk and praying constantly, because that's the only time I could find any peace. And I was starting to meditate, and forced meditation really works. You know, it's hard now that I'm out in life, but it's amazing what you can do when your back's against the wall. And I started to find peace in meditation and prayer, and that's all I wanted to do. And when I got in this cell with these other 5 guys, I had this longing to kneel down and pray. And but I didn't know how it was going to go over, But one night I decided, okay, the lights go dim. They never go dark in jail. They got to be able to watch you. So the lights go dim, and I kneel down and say a prayer, and I just kept doing that every morning and every night for a while. And I don't know how long it was, but one night I kneel down and I start to pray, and I feel my bunk move next to me. And I look out the corner of my eye, and this other inmate's kneeling next to me, this Indian kid. And I remember thanking God that I was there. I remember being so full of gratitude that I was there. And before I finished my prayer, he hopped up and got back in his bed. But the next day he grabs me, he's all, "Hey, Doc, I knelt down by you last night, but I don't know how to pray. Will you teach me how to pray?" And so I go back to my missionary days, and I teach him the steps of prayer, and then he and I start praying together every night, Not out loud, but we would kneel together, and he'd pray his prayer, and I'd pray mine. And eventually another guy joined us, and then maybe one of the guys would say, "Hey, pray for my brother, And so this 6 months that I went back to jail turned into the turning point of my life. And my sponsor told me all along that one day, if you get through this, you will look at all this horrible stuff as the greatest blessing of your life. And that's what it became. And when I could find peace with no drugs, not running anywhere, not needing anyone, but all by myself in a jail cell with a towel wrapped around my head, I knew I got this. And I knew I'd never use again. And that's been 17 years.
Wow.
Can you describe that feeling of peace? I mean, I think for people listening, that's something everyone searches for, regardless of whether they're actively using or not, or they're just in a stressful life. What was that like for you in that cell, praying, meditating? Can you describe that peaceful feeling and how that was different than...
I got to the point where I could turn off the negative so quick. And I was in such a negative environment. But I could turn the negative off, and the only way I can describe it is all that was flooding into me was positivity. I could watch thoughts go by, and if it was something that was going to take me down, I could just look at it and let it go. And the only things I've told my kids, and I've tried to pound it into their heads, that they need to have time every day where they have no negs. And whether it's in the tub or wherever, you've got to take this time to where you just get positivity. And it just felt so empowering that I could feel so comfortable in my own skin in such a horrible place with nothing. And so it's just positivity, love, acceptance, accountability. I'd get done meditating, and I'd call my wife and say, "Listen, I know I'm here, but I want to help. What can I do from here to help?" And when I would pray, I'd say a prayer for her, then I'd close that prayer, and I'd say a prayer for my son, and I would just, everything became outward instead of what do I need. And I think I felt real love for the first time in my life, for others and for myself. And I don't know if that answers it.
That's a beautiful description. I mean,
yeah,
it's something I long for, and when
something we all long for, I believe.
Sure.
I mean, everybody wants to feel loved and accepted, positive and be empathetic and all that. I mean, I think what you're saying is that you found who you are and you were okay with who you are. Yeah. And I think that's a powerful statement, being okay with who you are. But your story doesn't end there. So you get out after 6 months, and do you go to any other sort of treatment, or do you just know that you're working on it your own way?
Well, they sent me, the judge, I went back before the judge eventually, and he said to me these exact words, "Rod Gardner, your life's like a really bad country music song, but I think you're worth saving." And he said, "I'm going to send you back to that halfway house, and this is it." And I went back to that halfway house, and I was a rock star. It was either a 3 or 4 month program. I plowed through it. I had to go out and get a job in Ogden there. My uncle, Sam T. Evans.
Yeah.
Yeah. I went over and worked for Uncle Sam selling toppers, and my cousin Eric, and I'd work there during the day and then take the bus back and live in the halfway house. But it was full of gratitude all the time. Man, I got a job. I'm outside. I'm on a bus. You know, it was just...
You got your freedom back.
Yeah. I was...
And you got choices.
Well, and it sounds like that combination of prayer and meditation, which can be so powerful, was really transformational for you.
It was.
Like now, your description and even the affect on your face, you know, I could tell that you saw the whole world in a different way compared to the first time you had been at that halfway house.
So after the Sam T. Evans job, you don't stop there. You decide you want to get your license back.
Right. Yeah. So I hit up the dental board after a while. I went out, when I got home, I poured concrete with a friend of mine for a while, and it didn't take me long to realize I didn't want to do that. Yeah. And so I had a meeting with the dental board, and I was really active in AA, the church 12-step programs. Pretty quickly they made me a facilitator of one of those programs, and it was an every week thing. And then I was going to a lot of AA, so I was continuing.
Mm-hmm. Your aftercare.
Yeah, big time. It wasn't aftercare anymore. It was, this is my life. I've found this secret, and why would I want to stop here? I've experienced this amount of happiness. I want to pile on top of it. And so I met with the dental board, and they decided to grant me a probation license. I had to be on probation for 5 years. I had to work under another dentist. I couldn't prescribe. So I found a guy in Layton who took a chance on me. You know, that was not an easy sell.
Nope.
And had plenty of people say no, but this guy took a chance on me, and I, for 5 years, worked under him. If a patient needed a prescription, we'd have to run it by him, and then they had me doing UAs. It felt like, I've told people 3 or 4 times a week. That's what it felt like, but it was once a week for sure. And it was a little place down the street from where I worked, and if my number came up, it was 7 days a week. My
color was brown.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now. Yeah. I mean, I was on that program. I had to call. It was brown. Dang it. Got to go in.
Got to go. And, but I was happy to go.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was too. This test I've been studying for.
Yeah.
I was going to go.
Right. I'm not cheating anymore.
Yeah.
This will be good. So I did that for 5 years, and it really had no intentions of practicing in Tremont, never again. But this office space opened up, and I decided to just buy some space, and we sat on it for a while, and my kids were really settled there, and my wife ended up not going through with a divorce, and we just said, what the hell, well, let's go for it. And
now, being from a small town myself, I can imagine the word got around about your problem, right?
Yeah, more than the word. Yeah, many people experienced it firsthand.
Right, and so did that factor in? Were you hesitant at all? Did you wonder how people would receive you trying to come back to town and practice again after what happened?
You know, the old me would have gone through all that. What are they going to think, all that? But I was so at peace with where I was. I really knew.
Because you knew you were
I knew
ready.
what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I knew, I'm going to do this. I didn't know how it would go.
Yeah.
But I had confidence. because I truly felt like if you stay on this path and you do these things right, that it's going to work out. And I've been back there 10 years now, and it's been just wonderful. The people of Box Elder County, for the most part, have welcomed me with open arms. We've got a thriving practice. I've got my son in there now. We bought the space next to us and blew a hole through the wall, and
that's great.
I feel so blessed, and I wouldn't, I hate all the people that I hurt along. I don't hate the people. I hate the fact that I hurt all these people along the way. I hate some of the experiences I put my wife and my kids through, and my family. But this has defined me and who I am and who I want to be. And, as Casey knows, and anybody who's gone through it knows, we continue to struggle. Maybe not with drugs, maybe not with alcohol, but I've got a million character defects. I wake up a lot of the time just sort of negative. And that's something that I've got to keep working on. So the beauty of the 12 steps is I feel like you can apply it to anything. And I don't want to just not use drugs. I want to use those steps to continue to progress. But I'm getting better at not doing that. If it happens, I'm getting better at closing that window quicker.
Yeah,
I attribute all that to the things I've learned in my journey that I wouldn't have learned in life. I don't know who or where I'd be had I never used drugs. I'd probably be anxious and not pleasant to be around.
I can tell you this. I'm impressed by your story. And, at the very end of our podcast, there's usually something we'll do. It's like, what's your takeaway? And I'd ask Dr. Matt. But right now, for me, the takeaway is that I've been there where you were laying in the cell and you couldn't find one positive thing to think about. And as an active addict, you think to yourself, this is it. It's over. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are listening to this podcast that when they hit that rock bottom, they go, this is it. It's over. My life will never be the same. True. Your life will never be the same, but your life can be better, and you can have more, and you can do so many different things with it if you take that first step.
Yep.
And that's what it takes. And so that rock bottom is different for everybody else. But just because you mess up doesn't mean your life's over. You got to keep moving.
Oh, I agree. I feel like it's what's the saying? Pressure creates diamonds, not hugs. Like an easy life doesn't create a diamond, but the pressure does.
Right.
And having approached your situation the way you did, there was a lot of pressure you were describing there, mentally and emotionally. But you seem to me like that you're a much more confident, optimistic person, despite dealing with negativity, and struggling to overcome. We all have character defects. We all have personality flaws, but the desire to work on them, I think it sounds like you have a confidence that you can overcome those things, closing that window, like you said.
Right. Yeah. It makes me happy to tell the story and, be on this end of it for sure.
I think you're going to help so many. We want to say thank you very much for stopping by and sharing your story. As always, if you have an idea or a guest or you'd like to be on the show, you can reach out to us on our social, Project Recovery, Instagram, and Facebook, or you can even email us. Dr. Matt, thank you. It's good to have you back, buddy.
Good to be back.
And thank you again for listening. You're listening to Project Recovery, brought to you by our friends at useonlysdirected.org. With their opioid solution, it is speak out, opt out, and, of course, throw out. Project Recovery, it's a KSL podcast.
The contents of this program are for informational purposes only. The program is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed therapist, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this program. KSL does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the program. Reliance on any information provided on the program is solely at your own risk.
It's the story of an American held in a dark Venezuelan prison.
Then all of a sudden they all kind of lined up. They pointed their guns at me. And this is the point where I thought, I'm going to die today.
I'm Becky Bruce. I spent a year working on Hope in Darkness, which now has more than 2 million downloads. Find it on kslpodcast.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.